Greetings, friends. Shabbat Shalom. I hope you all had a wonderful celebration to usher in the new time of your life. I'm sure Jimmy did, since it was his birthday the other day. And now suddenly, we're at the conclusion of the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe, the 10 days that reset our lives. Now in Rosh Hashanah, we were inscribed in the Book of Life. And we were told to wake up, smell the roses, realize where we were, what we were, who we were, where we were going, and most importantly, did we like what we saw? If not, we could change it. We were in complete balance. We could affect the direction of life. And now, we have a chance to take all that we've done over these last 10 days and using the ancient mechanism that allows us to return to perfection, we could ask for and we could grant forgiveness. This, my friends, is Yom Kippur, a day of lot casting, which coincidentally is the Torah portion that is read, that we go back to, the one about the most fascinating sacrifice of ancient biblical times. Although I think instead it should be called a day of healing, because that's what it's really about learning to really understand and employ the forgiveness mechanism. It's so important to do. And I want to welcome you all as we gather as a community to join together to express our nature of kindness, compassion, thoughts and feelings, hopes, dreams, and wishes that unites us all. As we come together every week in this community house of spirit, Beth Ruach. So once again, please do go ahead, invite everybody that you know, physically, psychically, emotionally, or spiritually, to gather and share from Psalm 133, the Hine Matov. Come together right now. Hine Matov, Menayim, Shevetahim Gam, Yachad, Hine Matov. Yachad. How good, how pleasant it is for brothers and sisters together. Community, 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 together. So as a community, let us all spread love, goodwill, and fellowship to the world. Whether it's Yom Kippur or any other day, it's what we should be doing. Now, this is a really interesting holy day. It's one called for in Leviticus 16:29. This day shall be an eternal statute for you. In the 7th month, on the 10th of the month, you shall degrade yourselves, and you shall not do any work, neither the native nor the stranger who dwells among you. So it's for everybody. It's a day of fasting. In fact, it is the day of fasting. But we are actually not told to fast. We are not told not to wear leather. We're simply told to degrade ourselves. Now, so what is it? What is degrade? Well, it's the same term that's used in Exodus 1:11, which talks of the Egyptian tax collectors. And who knows better than a tax collector how to degrade or afflict, which is what the more modern translation is, afflict. Now, we all grew up being taught we are forbidden to eat, to drink, to bathe, to anoint ourselves, to wear shoes, to have sexual relations. But those are rabbinic traditions, not Torah. And the reason for their inclusion is that the gratification of our body and our bodily appetites was believed to be the principal source of sin. I don't know if that's still the case. I'm not even going to walk down that road with anybody right now. Annual services have emphasized this as the time of repenting our evil ways and returning to the path of good, teshuva, repentance, return. Return to the right path must therefore include an earnest attempt to control and even to suppress such appetites. And I've mentioned before how important the concept of teshuva, returning, is. But friends, as the Torah and the Talmud also tell us, affliction changes with the times, and we have to be prepared to review these things. Today, maybe affliction is going an hour without checking Facebook to see what your friends are up to, without the internet or your sacred tablet, or God forbid, your cell phone. Now, today is not an independent day of what's come before. This is an amazing 10-day New Year celebration, although I consider it more of a new you celebration because it is a new you. It's focused much more on how we've treated others and been treated by others, and we are contemplative of our sins. Now, there's no other day in the year where we focus on these kinds of things. Now, accordingly, we can wipe the slate clean and start again. We introduced it with a meal and well wishes. We ate an apple dipped in honey. The apple represented the knowledge we gained from Eden, and the honey is for a sweet life. Well, that was 10 days ago. That's how we began this period. Now we're at the end of the 10 days. This whirlwind trip through the Sephiroth on the Tree of Life, this is where you search your soul for any negatives you have done and seek forgiveness for them. First and foremost, from any individual you may have harmed. Secondarily, or if that option's not possible, then from God. Don't forget to seek it from the harshest judge of all, yourself. And we do this because this is about our task of not just healing ourselves, but our role in tikkun olam, the healing of the world. And friends, do not just look for your actions. Look at your words, but harder still, look at your intentions, your kavanah, even though no one else but you knows what they were. Because the sacred book we've been reading, the Torah, it ends without conclusion. It is not a history, but a forever tale where we each see our promised land to take steps ourselves to enter it. Just like this day is not a one-off. We find ourselves here in the same situation every year. And so this is a major step on that road to the promised land, your promised land. And over time, this day has become the most important holy day in the year. The Day of Atonement, a solitary event, at one mint. It is about our at one time. Now, and although on this day, you'll find more people congregating in synagogue than any other day, we are in a group, but most often we feel alone. The soul searching is actually very individual. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round to find I'm not the man I think I am at home. Oh no, 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 I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse up here alone. I couldn't resist Rocket Man. Now, during our lives, we follow certain paths to holiness, and we undergo rituals. And during the holy days, our process is reminiscent of the steps that one takes in entering holy ground. The closer you get to the sanctuary, the holier the ground, and so the more you prepare yourself. These are the steps of the 10 days of repentance. The more you process through, the closer you get to the holier ground. And the holiest ground is in your heart. Wow, just think of the hard diamond-like substance you might have encased it in. And if you have, it was to protect what you instinctively saw as the most vulnerable part of your being. Through your retrospection and introspection, through self-discovery, you've used the time of judgment to see the real self is actually the divine image of you, and you can do what you need to do to get yourself back on that path. Each of us can actually be better than we were, and every year this holy day allows us to reconnect to that belief and to elevate ourselves just a little higher. Now, anyone can attend synagogue and sit through the Yom Kippur service. It is long, but it can be exciting. You can look up the order and the prayers and do it alone or on one of the services on the internet. If you cannot find one to attend that suits you, and I do thank you for joining me today in ours. Now, as with Rosh Hashanah, I want to focus on what makes this difference. I'm not going to do an entire service. And what you may want to contemplate during it. So what does it entail? Well, we begin this holy day, and this holiest of days actually, the night before, because the Hebrew day begins the prior evening, of course, and we recite a prayer. Although more accurately, it's a legal formula that became a significant part of the liturgy only in the 15th century because it allowed the conversos, the Spanish and Portuguese Jews who were forced to convert during the Spanish Inquisition, to annul the vows of conversion. Now, it was written far earlier, but it did not become a piece of regular liturgy until then. Now, the Kol Nidre, meaning all vows, is the annulment of vows. Now, we ask God to release us from any vows that we may have forgotten, made inappropriately, or been unable to fulfill in the previous year. As I said, it is a much more recent addition to traditional liturgy, and it wasn't always welcomed into the service by many rabbinic authorities, and it was actually expunged from Western European prayer books during the 19th century. Now, you've heard me talk of the origin of the word nidre before. It's from the same root as nazir, to vow, referring to the Nazirite vow in Numbers 6, the vow of dedication to God made by male or by female, and symbolized by long flowing hair, and perhaps best represented in the Old Testament by Samson, and in the New by Jesus. Now, Kol Nidre is chanted 3 times in increasing volume. It has become one of the most powerful pieces of Jewish liturgy, and there's so many fantastic versions of it available to listen to, and I encourage you all to go and find one you really like. And there was a fascinating change that took place in the wording of it by Rashi's son-in-law, Rabbi Meir ben Shmuel, who changed the phrase from the last day of atonement until this one to from this day of atonement until the next. And therefore he changed the nature of the prayer from one concerned with unfulfilled obligations of the past to one of vows which one may not be able to fulfill or observe in the future. And you'll hear it said both ways. Now, I don't play it using the traditional temple cantillation, and that's because I was taught many of the High Holy Day songs many, many, many years ago by someone who lived in a small village, really, up near Sfad, northern Israel. And these were the folk tunes he had learned growing up. And in his memory and in his honor, I try and keep them alive and do them his way, the old village way. Kol Nidre V'es Are Hush V'we V'che Amen V'kon Mei V'kinu Sei V'hinyue Din Da Na Dishta Bana Uracharina Urasana Al Naf Shatana Mi Yom Kippurim Ze'at Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu L'Tova. All vows, oaths, prohibitions, which we made to God and we're not able to fulfill, from last Yom Kippur to this Yom Kippur, or from this Yom Kippur to the next Yom Kippur. May all such vows between ourselves and God be annulled. May they be void, of no effect. May we be absolved of them and released from them. May these vows not be considered vows. These oaths not be considered oaths. These promises not be considered promises. It's a bit confusing because there are many parts of the Torah that talk about vows and their importance. And while this was added perhaps as an ancient form of social protest to honor another group of freedom fighters, the message is still clear. Be careful of what you vow. Now, you may or may not notice that the evening of Yom Kippur is the only night in the entire Jewish calendar when a talit, or a prayer shawl, is worn in the evening. It's a very special day, my friends. This is a day of atonement or at-one-ment, an individual reconciliation of who you were, are, and want to be. It's celestial judgment time, and it's a personal one. Do not forget, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur were not included in the 3 gathering festivals. These are personal undertakings between you and your God alone. Now, our sages have said that on Rosh Hashanah 3 books are opened. The book of the righteous, the book of the wicked, and the book of in-between or intermediate. Those who are righteous are immediately inscribed in the book of life. The wicked, immediately condemned. And the rest of us, my friends, have these 10 days to reflect, to review, and to renew our efforts to be good, decent, loving people. It doesn't have to take great effort. There's a God particle in each and every one of you, which means we all contain an element of perfection. Let it expand within you with every breath that you take. Do not judge yourself as to whether you attain perfection. Just try and be as good as you can, and as loving as you can, as compassionate and forgiving as you can. Treat everyone as you would want to be treated. Stop giving energy to your self-defeating attitudes and say to yourself, I now release all bitterness and disappointments with the world. I now release hardening my heart against suffering. Friends, we can become life-affirming rather than controlled and restricted. We can discover that life is not always grim and serious. Happiness is a legitimate response to existence. Today, can you find moments of pure happiness? I know that you can if you take a look. We can learn to identify with others rather than against them, realizing that others are not unlike ourselves and are therefore worthy of the same rights and privileges. We can relate to others as individuals and equals, encountering our ego defenses, rage, anxiety, underlying hurt, shame, and grief. It's never easy. Seeing ourselves as we really are takes great courage. And I know you all have that courage. And for real change to occur, you will always need awareness, dedication, and perseverance. How much you're really interested in these things. I know you're interested. These 10 days are days of judgment. And I often get asked some great questions this time of the year about these things. Are we watched by God for these days only? Or do we think God sees us all the time and knows the secrets of our soul? Do we think we fool the celestial court for the 10 days to get inscribed in the book of life and then go back to being who we were? Why do we observe these 2 days more than any others? Why do I recite things I do not believe are true in my life? One of my favorites, of course, is, can you celebrate your birthday if it falls on Yom Kippur? Well, yes, the answer is, of course you can. Now, these are all great questions. We are told how solemn, self-judging, full of confessions, some real and some not, and how self-condemning this day is. Do not make that the meaning of the day. The meaning is in how you move the needle of decency just a little more to the positive. The Talmud says a man should always consider himself evenly balanced, half sinful, half righteous. If he commits one good, he has tilted the scales towards righteousness. If he commits one sin, he has tilted the scales towards sinfulness. Friends, do not get weighed down by a lifetime of choices. Look at each choice you made by itself. It's never too late to alter the balance. Remember, Judaism, like Buddhism after it, is very much based on intention, our kavanah, thoughts and things. What you think more than what you say or do tilt those scales one way or the other. Now, only you know if you're watched by God every day, or only today. I think we are all his or her representatives, and so we monitor ourselves on God's behalf and act accordingly. And if you choose to observe only 2 days, hey, that's okay. There's not that many holy days actually called for in the Torah. These two happen to be pretty important ones, so if you observe nothing else, these are two great choices. And I would encourage you to at least try and find some time and take sacred time and space for yourself and your thoughts at some point during the year. Now, in today's impersonal world, there's more pressure on each of us as individuals for the responsibilities that we have and the burdens that are on our shoulders. Now, instead of condemning yourself and considering your actions as being sins, consider them as simply negative choices or harmful choices that fall into 3 basic categories. Harmful events involving another person. Harmful events involving yourself. Harmful events involving the nature of things or God. And accordingly, these are the 3 types of forgiveness that we seek. This is a holy day devoted to forgiveness. And for my dear friend Lindsay, that's what I really want to talk about and get you to think about. We all have committed one or all of the 3 harmful events. We've all felt them committed against us. Sometimes people approach the season and I've seen emails and unfortunately advice that says to say this: if I happen to offend you, then please accept my apology. Now, what kind of lame asking for forgiveness is that? To some, it's like saying, hey, if in your deluded self-serving view you imagine that anything I said or did caused you angst because your ego gets in the way and you don't understand, then get over it. This if I offended, then please accept. It's actually considered a literal fulfillment of the halakhic requirement. That means the legal requirement, but it fails the halakhic intent. Remember, friends, it's intent, your kavanah. That's the key that opens the door. Now, for various reasons, we find it difficult to seek forgiveness from anyone we may have hurt during the year or at any other time, quite frankly. Perhaps it's because we do not like to admit our own errors or shortcomings. We're taught from an early age to be strong, competitive, to come out on top. We do not like to admit that we made a mistake. Friends, above all, you have to seek forgiveness from whoever you may have harmed. Strength does not come from being aggressive. Strength does not come from bullying or beating others. True strength comes from our being vulnerable and opening ourselves up. And with the focus on forgiveness of self and others, there is, of course, a forgiveness protocol to be followed. Now, these days of awe are the time of the year where everyone is concerned with their place in the world and their impact upon their lives and the lives of others. And therefore, the life of the world comes together to work to tilt the scales. The highest level of forgiveness comes from the divine source of mercy. And the divine source recognizes the holy and the good equally with the profane and the evil. All is measured on the scales of divine justice. Friends, an easy fast to you all. So stick around and join us for part 2.